fantastic to see you all here, fantastic to see the people online, and I must say a fantastic 10 years. So of course it's special to think about 10 years. 15 years ago, Value-Based Healthcare Center Europe started sort of out of my mailbox with those people that were thinking about how we're going to implement this great stuff, but does it work? So of course we're going to spend a little bit of time on what we have achieved as a community in the last 10 years. Of course a little bit. Then the main thing of course is today to get inspired, to learn from each other, and don't remember to vote, right? So who do you think should be the community award, both on and offline? And our vote is important. So collectively we vote for 50% of that community award, and we'll see if the jury had it right. So that is one thing that we're going to do. It's important to do that, but of course it is also good to reflect a little bit and think about what is it going to be the next 10 years. And basically that is what we had as a theme. So what is it that we're going to move forward, that we're going to push forward, and that we can hand over at some day to our children? And hopefully say, you know, your loved ones are going to be treated even better than we have today. And our healthcare systems are in good array, and it's fun to work there, and let's do that. So that is a sort of the idea that we had here. We need to push our legacy forward and understand that we're just part of this process in healthcare. So that's what I did some reflections on, and I think some of you that took the time to talk with me about what they think should be on the agenda and where we are good and where we need to work on and who we need to help out and convince. So I like to share that journey a little bit with you here. Of course, it will be available at some point online if you want to get some points out or for any other reason. So as a VBHC community, we can be a little bit proud. We can be a little bit proud of that we now understand how to implement value-based healthcare. Team for team, medical condition for medical condition, population certification for population certification, and as many of you know, it's doable. To a certain degree it's fun, but it's not easy. So that's basically what we know how to do that, and I think many of you here who share their experiences with us and with others in the network, and we know how to do that. So that is, I think, one of the things that I think we can state here. The second thing that we now know after 10 or 15 years is we can implement VBHC across very many medical conditions. Of course, knee and hips, oncology, cardiology, internal medicine, elderly care, primary care, prevention. So we know that in the world, we've seen that people have been successfully implemented VBHC, and of course tweaking it a little bit to their specific situation, but we can do that. So going back 10 years, it was, any idea how we're going to do primary care? No, not really. Now we know. So actually, we've done that collectively, and I think that's great. The prize winners and the award winners and the nominees over the last year, of course, knowing that, but have contributed significantly by showing their examples not only to us, but the way we could share it to others. And some of you worked on the videos and sort of helped out, or you get some sort of a strange phone call of somebody from the world says, it seems that you know how to do this. And then people say, oh, do we really? But that is basically what we've done, and we're really, really happy with that. And also, something that I think is very positive is we've seen over the years it can be implemented across different healthcare systems, across different countries, across different, let's say, resource-rich and resource-poor situations. And of course, it's slightly different, but the way of implementing, the strength of outcomes, the strength of teams, the strength of trying to do that, and really doing why most of us wanted to work in healthcare, it works. Did we know that when the book was out? No, we assumed it would work, but we were not sure that it would work in Pakistan and India and Australia and Brazil and Colombia and Canada, and we didn't know that up front, but we know now it can be done. Yes, of course, we need to help out in making that work. So that's something I think we can be proud of. It's now 1,500 cases that we have sort of labeled here, so actually that seems to be very inspirational for people in different phases of their implementation. So that is, I think, a big thing. And what what I'm personally the most proud of is we started, all of us, struggling, thinking about these patient-relevant medical outcomes, right? This original idea from Porter and saying, you know, we need to have this hierarchy, we need to start with outcomes, we want to focus on how can we get better outcomes, how can we get the delta up for an individual patient, for what we did last year, for what others are doing, and we strongly focused, if you look at the original work, on the medical part of outcomes, and I think they're very, very important. Now we see, I'm not going to do all the journey, but now we see, and I think we can start to say that we are sort of reaching this notion of, yes, patients are our best teachers. We seem to be able more and more and more to learn from our patients, to qualify it, to make sure that we can deal with it. And most people have their teachers in high esteem. And to think about a patient as a teacher is a very different notion than saying, you know, it's something we need to run through a process. That doesn't mean there's not a process in place, of course there is, but that's, I think we're now capturing that, we're learning from it, and we're doing that better and better. And if you think about it, wow, that's a real change and a real contribution in what we've all been doing. And of course, we need to learn and do that every day better. So that is what we have here. Now, if we look forward a little bit, came up with some of your inputs on, let's say, 5 things that we need to push the frontiers on. We're working on it, we see progress, but you know, that's still something that if we do this, we can get much better impact, and we can really leave a good legacy to the future generations, as well as making sure our loved ones are treated better. That's basically what it is. I learned from many of you saying, you know, it's not about how I would want to be treated. It's about how would your significant other or your father or your mother or your child to be treated. Whatever policy we make, whatever we do, that is what we should try to aim for. And then, of course, we have all the practicalities of the day. I understand that. But that's very different than just saying, you know, we need to deliver something and doing that. So a couple of the frontiers. And one of the frontiers is what we could call this macro fear, right? This, in many countries, saying, you know, we're worried. We're afraid. Some people are afraid. We're afraid of an exploding healthcare budget. And that has all kinds of fear there. And it's basically saying, you know, what's the reaction of that fear? The reaction of that fear is rationing. Oh, we cannot do everything, so we need to find rationing mechanisms. We know that's fundamentally wrong. It may be needed in short term sometimes, but we know it doesn't work. And probably we need to explain that. So going back a little bit in history, probably fear is what we should fear the most. And if we are acting on fear and rationing and all these, oh, it's going to be double the cost and it's going to be double lacking of faculty, of nurses and others. If that is driving our thinking, guess what? That's going to happen. And we from VBHC should and try to help macroeconomists, health economists, policymakers to at least rethink a little bit on what they're doing and maybe need a little bit more courage. You know, I'm a business guy, as you know. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to run a budget, okay? So that doesn't mean budgets are not important. Costs are important. It's item 5. It's not item 4. So we are now, I think, in a position to influence policy a little bit more and explain that there are 2 logics that we need to figure out. So much we can say about that, but that is something that we need to do and also learn from the observations people have in that field. So a second frontier is contracts. And everybody in the VBHC world knows, you know, that there's this big issue with these contracts. And what's the issue with the contracts? Most payment and contracts models are not helping us doing the right thing, okay? And sometimes we criticize for the fact that we're overcharging or doing all kinds of things in terms of arbitrage. But there's a mess in this contracting bit. So wait a minute. We need to do something about it. Now, Porter came originally with the bundle payment to say we need to pay for outcomes. And we tried and we did, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But we are making lots of progress. We're not there yet, but yesterday I think we had a great thinkers masterclass and some of the black belts here also seeing some of the newer thinking on how we can think about contracts that will at least not get into the way. that will make us do the right things. And we need to think about it. And it's not that easy. It's easy for acute care, but it's not that easy probably for some other bits, but we need to think about that. So there's a lot of progress there, and we need, it's not enough just to remove the wrong incentives. It's making sure it doesn't get into the way of doing the right things for patients. That is what we need to do, and we're getting there. And it's fortunately getting more traction. A third frontier, we're going to have a panel about it, and that is we see good results and we have high hopes of new technology. And at the center of that, often it's data and information, right? And other medical technology are equally important, but we have this data and IT bit of doing that. And we need to figure out how we can get the right information at the right time for the right person. Whether it's the patient, whether it's the team, whether it's something else. And I almost sound like an accountant now, saying you need the right information, need to be correct, and need to be, but that's a key thing that we need to keep in mind. Who needs the information at that point in time, and focus on that. And we see such great technology developments in it. And I just labeled a few. So in doing that, we've seen that fortunately we have these frontiers. To have compassionate doctors, that's in most countries not an issue. To have compassionate doctors and doing the right things, and to have them compassionate and data-driven, right? so how do we get the heart and the head at the right point in time? And we see that doctors are doing it. If you look at your applications, if I look at the development of last year's education for the last 10 years, 5 years ago we saw a shift. We saw almost all applications had concrete data information stuff in it, or had medical technology in it. Before there was a little bit more on outcomes and organizational bits, which is not because of value-based healthcare, it's just a development. We see so many people coming up with great new ideas on technology. It's probably easier from a tech angle. But what we also have learned is that if we start with tech, it's not going to do much. It doesn't mean we don't get inspired and we don't know a pilot, but it's not going to do much, apart from all kinds of other issues. What we know, and I have an Accenture background, I'm not a techie, but I have that, and already then I knew you need to start the other way around. You don't start with tech. You start with the inspiration, with the patient and the delivery, and then you work your way back in the process, and then you're going to start about thinking about tech. Of course, we love to work with people in tech who really understand how to get the tech infrastructures and the architecture working. But it doesn't work typically to just put in a bunch of tech. And it may work for a small group, but it's not going to work overall. We're going to have a panel who's going to talk about it. And we need to push that frontier. And wouldn't it be great? Hopefully one day you say, you know, your information is there if you're a patient, if your loved one is going to the hospital. And we have that sort of sorted out on the multiple levels where people want to use information. So that would be a great gift. The fifth thing is that we seem to make a lot of progress, but still need to think about scaling this up. And this is the building of teams of teams. So we have teams that are now, one way or the other, trying to figure out how to work for this patient and have all the disciplines there and work with other disciplines and get that going. Medical condition for medical condition. We'll say, well, wait a minute, these patients typically may need different teams. And I think the Cleveland Clinic deserves a lot of credit for their first development, saying, you know, we are teams of team. So we need to think about, now we need to hook up this team with the other teams because it's around the patient, and how we're going to get that going. We see many initiatives coming from different directions as well on network care, connected care, or other approaches. And I think that having this notion of teams of teams around the patient is something organizationally that is key before we start with all kinds of organizational development and design stuff. I love that, but don't start with org design, start with the patient. So that is basically what we do here, and I think we're making a lot of progress in doing that. So these are sort of partly what we see, what I talked with, what the advisory council did, and talked with you guys. Wait a minute, if we could push these 5 frontiers, we're working on it, and push these forward, probably the implementation will become, not never easy, but become much easier for our next generation, and hopefully give some confidence to other people in saying, you know, don't be only rationing care. So I'd like to thank you and everybody in the VBHC community, and hopefully we start today building the legacy for the next generation as well. And I think it's what we need to do. We stand on the shoulders of great people like Porter writing his book in 2006 and other people that helped us during our careers and inspired us in doing things. And we took that and we made it better. And I think the next 10 years will be building forward. And these frontiers may help us do that. There's some examples here of why we made progress so far. But happy to give that. So far, we have not, and I've also interviewed the most criticals I could find on VBHC, we have not found so far a more systematic, comprehensive, implementable approach. So far. I hope somebody does it, because it will make our lives probably very much easier, but we haven't seen something else with VBHC. What we see is the other way around. We see other people with great ideas, but then run into what they perceive as the wall of implementation and say, well, you may not think it's great, or you may have another great idea, no problem with that. Why don't you use value-based healthcare as an implementation engine to get it going? And I'm not too concerned about that yet, but why don't you do that? Because it's going to work team for team for team, and why don't you use it as an engine? And we as a community know how to tweak that to a little bit more fun for the teams. I'd like to very much thank you all. I'd like to thank all the partners and supporters now this year and the previous years, and looking forward to others to join, of making both the VBHC Center Europe possible, but certainly the prize. I think it's sort of got its point here. Let's create a great legacy, and let's have a wonderful 10 years to go. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Fred, for this inspiring start of this afternoon. I loved a lot of your presentation, but one of them, which was actually great for the link to the next speaker, is patients should be our teachers, and that's nice, because the next speaker we have is Marty Carney. She's online in a couple of seconds. She was diagnosed with the cancer 30 years ago and learned, of course, to navigate through all the health system